Okay, we're back. Apparently we missed one of the presentations, so let's see if we can't make that work.
Hi, this is Kriti. My topic is smart meters. Are they smart enough to use them? Like I explained last week, smart grid is mainly used to read usage patterns of power. Secondary usage of smart grid is to restore power supply by using switches during outage. This is also used to integrate power generated by different renewable energies like solar and wind. Here we have several problems with smart meters like privacy and hacking. Now, how do we solve these problems of privacy and hacking? Instead of smart meters, we can use new technique called as energy monitoring. What is energy monitoring? This is a way to see how much energy your home is consuming. How will this work? Energy monitor receives a wireless signal from a transmitter at the electric fuse box. This transmitter is connected to line feed cable by a clip. This clip will have a sensor which reads the signals emitting from cable. These signals are converted into data which you can easily understand. So instead of using smart meters which are prone to data corruption and hacking and making all appliances to smart devices, we can just use energy monitors. And about motivation and impact I have discussed last week. Is this project patentable? Yes, we can patent this. This comes under improvement for prior work. There are some related patents. Smart grid and method for operating a smart grid. This explains us how smart meters are configured to monitor and how they collect data and explains us how smart grid works. They filed this in Jan 2011 and power measurement system. This explains us how power is measured using a current sensing element at a supply line. This tells us accurately how much power we have used. Depending on these two patents, we can improve this project. Thank you.
Okay, what do you think of that presentation there? A little fast. A little fast, could slow it down, but the basic ideas were presented, and we got everything that we needed to know. Any questions? What was the contribution? Don't know. So this is the big problem, right? What is being done that's different than what exists? Instrumenting existing devices sounds like a reasonably good idea. Are you suggesting that you can't presently instrument existing devices, such as smart power measurements? It seems to me like, oh, smart meters. There exist. But what about smart measurement for appliances? For an outlet, for example. Looks like there might be something here. I would want to know if anyone has done this outlet device level power measurement. So I would do a search on Google and see if my idea was already done. If someone had already done it, then I would say, okay, what am I doing that's different? And if the answer is, well, I'm making it so it's hack-proof or maybe more secure, that might be the only contribution. But that might be enough. So if the contribution is we're doing per outlet power sensing, or POPs, which is a trademark term, then in effect we have a mechanism which perhaps can use secure means of communication to some central computer. And maybe all of these others are not secure. And that's enough of a contribution so that you can get a patent, even though you might say, well, gee, it doesn't seem all that, novel. It doesn't have to be. Just as long as your contribution is somewhat different. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to discuss with you a little bit about what it takes to write a patent. You now have this idea. You've expressed the idea, hopefully, so that it's your own in some sense. Now you want to lay claim or ownership to the idea so that if others infringe upon it, you can sue them. A patent is a license to sue. It's not a license to make money. It gives you what are called offensive rights. The ability to sue others is very offensive, right? And you can also tell them to stop producing stuff which infringes on your patent. In order, according to the patent law in this country, you cannot obtain triple damages from somebody who infringes on your patent unless you tell them. That means you must give them what they term in the field actual notice. The question of what actual notice constitutes legal actual notice is open. We know, for example, that if you have a server that is an individual who goes around tracking you down and explicitly handing you papers and says to you, you have been served, that is actual notice. If you send somebody an email and say, I have a patent on this, maybe that's not actual notice. If you call them on the phone and there's no verifiable way to show that they got notice, maybe that's not actual notice. If a lawyer sends a certified notarized letter to the company telling them to cease and desist, that is actual notice. So the question of what exactly is actual notice is not defined in the law, but it may be the case that you can examine the precedents for what was allowed. So when somebody offends you, they offend your patent, let's say, you give them actual notice. Then if they don't cease and desist, then you can sue them. If you win, you can get court costs plus triple damages. But you must have damages, which means your business must in some sense have been harmed. If you are a non-practicing entity, also known as an NPE, also known as a patent troll, you can have the ability to sue people anyway, and presumably for damages, especially if you can show that others have been paying you royalties, whereas they have not. The patent law has changed somewhat. Non-practicing entities may in fact have different status as of March of this year. That's when the America Invents Act takes hold. Meanwhile, if what you want to do is file a provisional patent application, there's no such thing as a provisional patent, but there is such a thing as a provisional patent application. If you file your provisional patent application, you can then get a patent number. The provisional patent application number, allows you to say that your patent is pending, which announces to the world that your idea has been locked down and filed with the patent office. Doesn't allow people to see it, but it does allow people to know that your idea has been locked down. You then have a year to file what's called a regular patent application, or RPA. So your first step might be PPA, provisional patent application. Your second step might be RPA, if you decide the provisional patent is something you want to turn, provisional patent application is something you want to turn into a regular patent. The costs involved can be astronomical when you get a lawyer doing this. But if you do it yourself, you have what's called the small entity fees, which run about $110, and you can file your own provisional patent application. And then when you try and build the business up over the next year, you can show that it's worthwhile, because the decision to get a patent is not just a legal decision. It is first and foremost a business decision. And the decision to spend a whole bunch of money on your idea should be based on the idea that that idea will get you some money in return. That is to say, you need a return on your investment. If your idea to create a force field that deflects objects in space is not an idea that you can sell to NASA, don't bother spending money on a lawyer to patent it, because the lawyer will charge you $350 an hour. That's a more recent price quote I just got from a patent agent out of Norwalk. And he will charge you $1,750 just to read your provisional patent application before you send it in. Not file it for you. You'll file it yourself. You'll write it yourself. All he'll do is read it. And then if you want to go file it later, well, then he's going to charge you more. Figure spending about 10 grand filing this patent and on lawyer fees. A lot of money for something that doesn't make you any money. But on the other hand, if you are representing yourself in Latin, you are what is called a pro se, or for yourself. A pro se filing is a very inexpensive filing for a small entity, that is you, the inventor. So what I thought I would do is run down for you this basic idea as soon as I find it. It's in here somewhere. Drafting the patent. I put it in the Dropbox so that you can download it on your own if you want to later. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is that there are these things which we are used to thinking about, devices, and then there are these other things which we're not used to thinking about, and that is software. And software patents and device patents can be somewhat different, because software patents are about algorithms and methods, and device patents are about machines. And a machine is something that can transform energy, for example. A human being eats food which stores chemical energy and converts the chemical energy into kinetic energy and into heat. So the human being, the human body is a machine. So when somebody asks, can machines think? The answer is, human bodies are machines, and humans can think, or at least they think they think. And so that's sufficient. And the answer is yes, machines can think. So maybe the question hasn't been properly posed, but if you find the answer unsatisfying, it's because you didn't ask the right question. So what I wanted to do first is tell you I am not a lawyer, and I am not a patent agent, and I cannot assist you in general in writing a legally correct patent. What I can tell you is what I know about patent law, based on the fact that I've filed patents before. My most recent patent in force is a patent that was issued in the United States, in Canada, in Japan, and in the PCT, or Paris Convention Treaty, which includes 17 member nations. That means but not China. That means anywhere, except for China, that participates in any of those patent offices or their areas is going to have to pay a royalty to the assigned entity. So now when you think about a patent, you think about two different entities, right? The first entity is the inventor or inventors, actual inventors, which will be named on the patent. These are protected according to the Constitution of the United States, which explicitly mentions inventors and having their ideas protected. And then there is the assignee of the patent. If you start a company, your patent will be assigned to the company, which means the company has the patent as an asset. If you work for another company, they, in turn, will take the assignment from you. I know one guy who works at a large company near here. He has 44 patents. He is the named inventor. But he has no assignment on any of the patents. What that means to him is that he can't get any of the benefit for the money. If the company wants to pay him some percentage, they can. I work for Fairfield University. If I use Fairfield University resources, Fairfield University gets assignment of the patent, but they pay me back some percentage, let's say 30% of anything that's brought in from royalties. So they have a relatively generous patent assignment. If you, as a student, create something, there is a student intellectual property agreement. The university lays claim to none of it unless you use university resources to develop your invention. So your invention that you do here without the use of extraordinary resources like laboratory equipment or grants, that's yours. And I've been pushing for student intellectual property so that students can keep it. Right? The university is not hiring you. In fact, it's the other way around. You're hiring the university. You're paying to go here. Therefore, the invention should belong to you. That's not to say that your invention will be worth anything, but it has the potential to be worth something. So one could say, oh, you've got a Kickstarter project that raised $5,000, and $5,000 is nothing. It doesn't even pay tuition for one semester. But on the other hand, there's potential to create a business that can grow. And so what you're really doing is you're starting a business. And so then the question is, what's the difference between innovation and commercialization? Big difference. Big difference between a prototype and a product. Big difference between a patent and a business. Big difference, right, between taking something that's just an idea that you had in the shower and turning it into a patent, and then taking the patent and building a business around it based on some prototype that got turned into a product that then got sold to customers, and then handling customers. Different thing, right? I run an Inventors Association of Connecticut meeting, and I also happen to be the president of the Inventors Association of Connecticut. And I can tell you, a lot of inventors are really bad entrepreneurs. Invention and commercialization are completely different skills, and people who are good at one are not necessarily good at the other. In fact, many patent holders do not want to start a business. All they want to do is license. It's very hard to make big money just licensing out your patent. And it's also very hard to license a patent. A lot of times inventors totally fall in love with their invention. Never make that mistake. Right? Your idea is worthless. No kidding. My idea is worthless. The only thing that's going to make it worth something is if you have sales. And the only way you can measure those sales that's going to be meaningful to any investor is in dollars. Nobody cares how many units you sold. All they care is how many dollars you've raised and how quickly you're able to grow your sales. You can value a business as a multiplier of sales. But if you have nothing but a patent, it's almost impossible to value the business. You can value a business even more highly if you have profit. And you can do it as a multiplier of profit. And that multiplier will be a function of how fast the profits are growing. When you have accelerated growth, then accelerated revenue growth, or ARG, as they say, that allows you to multiply your earnings after your costs with a much higher rate. Usually you can do something like twice the growth rate and still have a relatively cheap valuation for the company. So if you're thinking in terms of growing at, let's say, 10%, that's a reasonable growth rate. If your PE ratio can run up to like 20 times the price divided by the earnings for a stock price, if you have a stock, then that's considered okay, not terribly overpriced. But it depends who you ask. That's a formula that Peter Lynch used in his book One Up on Wall Street. So what the patent gives you the right to do is it gives you monopoly rights. It gives you offensive rights. It gives you the right to sue others. The provisional patent, which has yet to be issued by the Patent Office, gives you very few of those rights. But at least you've laid claim to having the invention and visiting the Patent Office before others. It gives you priority. Having priority is so important when you're going to try and enforce those rights and prosecute the patent. Patent lawyers will always tell you to get professional help. I'm here to tell you that's probably not a bad idea unless your goal is just to try and write your first patent and see if you can get it issued. If that's all you want to do, it's worth trying to do it. It's almost like going to the School of Hard Knocks, paying the patent fees and seeing what the Patent Office will do. For sure, the Patent Office will not just issue the regular patent application without some what they call office action. And how you respond to that office action in time, and usually you have like 30 days to respond, that will depend upon that will determine whether you get to keep your patent or not. Patents have a title. Patents have a list of inventors. Patents have an abstract, which basically describes the invention. Then patents must teach how to create the invention by a person who's skilled in the field. So in other words, you can't just hide all of the information that you need in order to create the invention. You have to describe it. Patents have no copyright. That means I can take all the patents that have been published, put them on Google with full images, and disseminate them widely. Google does not need permission. Patents have no copyright. Then at the end, the legal part of the patent that's so important is the claim. Some people say you can issue a provisional patent application without any claims. Others say it's good to have at least one. The goal of the claim is to make it as broad as you possibly can make it. A basic method patent might be anything that does any range finding using diffraction. That was a patent issued in 1987. That's a basic method patent. Anyone who uses the method at all for diffraction to do range finding infringes upon that patent. Patents have a limited life. The patent only lasts 20 years. So now the patent is in the public domain, and anybody can make use of diffraction to do range finding. There's an oath of the inventors that say, "I am the inventor." Now, it may be the case that somebody else invented it before you. Up until March, the first to invent is the one who can issue the priority in this country. Now in March, when the America Invents Act kicks in, it'll be the first to file, not the first to invent. So, big question is, what is it you're trying to patent? You could be trying to patent the methodology. You could be trying to patent the system. You could be trying to patent the device. So you could have a whole different set of things that you could patent. You could even have more than one thing that you'd like to patent. Then you have to look at the prior art. What's been done and what's different over what's been done. You have to cite the prior art, and if the prior art cites prior art, you might want to trace it back Further, if the prior art has been cited by others, you might want to see who's been citing that prior art, because all of that has to be listed. The patent examiner, who does this for a living down at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, will certainly find prior art. They have great search resources down there. Some of my students have become patent examiners, and the patent office is hiring. They're growing like gangbusters because of the American Invents Act and the way that Congress has allocated budget for them. In the past, the patent office usually made more money than it spent, but all the extra money had to be returned to the general fund. And the rapacious appetite of the Congress people was such that they would take what was in the general fund and spend it all and then some. So with the American Invents Act, the Patent Office now gets to keep some of the money, which means they can hire more patent examiners and take some of the backlog out of the patent system. Patent system backlog could be 6 years. If you go to South Korea, patent system backlog is 6 months. We do not have a world-class patent system in this country because of the backlog. It's a big problem. So addressing that backlog by hiring more patent examiners is one of the things that the American Invents Act is supposed to solve, or at least address. Another thing it allows you to do is it allows you to pay extra to go to the head of the line. Who does that favor? Well, if you're a big company and you have to spend an extra $5,000 to go to the front of the line, that's nothing. But if you're a little inventor and you don't have much resources, you can't afford it. So you're automatically discriminated against by the new American Invents Act. It's not meant to be your friend. If you're going to do a method patent needs some sort of an algorithm description. One way people use to describe algorithms is flowcharts. I've seen patents which came with CD-ROMs filled with code. You know that if you want to gain access to that CD-ROM, you have to go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office physically. They call it Crystal City, and it's down in Washington. So it's a bit of a haul. And in some sense, they've created a way to file everything you need to create the device, but they made it difficult to access because you can't just download the data. Figures. They used to say figures have to be written in Indian ink, you know, dark black ink, but now everybody uses a CAD tool to do their figures. And if you can use a CAD tool at all, you can do your own figures. But they have to be clear. They can't be color. They have to be black and white line drawings. The exception is when you're doing botanicals, you can file patents on flowers. And you can show color pictures now for flowers. So that's one of the things people can patent now, is life. You can patent life, especially if you've invented it by virtue of genetic manipulation. So the patent system has kind of gotten updated a little bit. If you've got something where you cross-pollinated a couple of interesting roses and now you've got a new color that no one has seen before, you can patent the flower. It's very good to have a unique name for every element inside of the device. Could be a light-dependent resistor. You could call it that and then say in your claims what a light-dependent resistor might be. Maybe it's a cadmium disulfide cell, maybe it's a selenium cell, maybe it's a solar cell, maybe it's a, you can list them all. List every possible light-dependent resistor. But when you're defining the basic idea and how it works, you could just say, and we use a light-dependent resistor as our sensor. So here's what a flowchart might look like if you sketch it out. Each block is labeled uniquely. 201, 202, 203. Perhaps this is figure 2, right? And it's showing me the 5 different elements of figure 2. Then in the narrative, I have to make reference to every single element. So I could say, block 201 is the display reference document, which shows blah, 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 blah. Right? That's a perfectly valid way to write the narrative. The figure lets you write the narrative the narrative almost writes itself once you have a good set of figures. Here's, I'll call it figure 3. And what it does is it may, give you more detail. It may give you additional steps to perform. It may give you what I would call what you need in order to be able to implement the code that captures the basic idea. Software patents, by the way, have been around since the 60s. Some of them were rewritten so that it looked like they were based in hardware, because it used to be you weren't allowed to get a software patent. But then the Patent Office caught wise to it in the late 70s, and then it became permitted. Once you go to a regular patent application, it's very good to define the provisional application upon which the regular patent application is based. This gives you priority. So if I file a regular patent application today, but I filed a provisional patent application less than a year ago, I would cite the provisional patent application. If a year from now, a year after I file a provisional patent application, I select not to file a regular patent application, if I've told no one, if I've never offered it for sale, if I never published anything about the invention, and if no one is using it at the moment, I can file another provisional patent application. In other words, you basically hit the snooze alarm and you can go to sleep for another year. The provisional patent applications that you are filing go into what's known as the file wrapper. The file wrapper is basically a file that gets mounted in the Patent and Trademark Office and can be referred to and found by a court of law, a patent examiner, a subpoena held by a lawyer, and is otherwise not widely available, not published, and not known to the public. So those provisional patents that you've been filing, nobody will ever see, unless there's some extenuating circumstance that causes them to want to see it, like you're suing somebody and you want to prove priority. So in effect, being able to lay claim to the old provisional patent application gives you what I would call a priority date. We can prove when you filed, we've got a patent, a provisional patent application number, and we will reissue a number when the regular patent application is issued. Field of the invention, that's one of those things where you can use the, I'll call it, there's an examiner's manual which lists all the different fields, all the different categories, and you want to be able to try and identify the field and category of your invention by number. And there's a rather long, complicated number that's used to uniquely identify all the fields. So it's really good if you can find what the field is for your invention. So you've already done a patent search. You've already decided your invention makes a contribution that's different. It's perfectly valid to say, my patent is just like the Kodak patent, with a difference. And the difference is they use hardware and I use software. And that's it. Now you might say, look, that's obvious. And a patent is supposed to be non-obvious. But if it solves an important problem that Kodak had to deal with, it must be the case that somebody else must have done it, and if nobody else has done it, and you can't find it in the literature, maybe it isn't obvious. Now, you could still get an office action that says it's obvious, but then you can try and fight the office action. I like the idea of describing the motivation for the problem. This is an important problem. I'm writing about this drug that's going to address a disease that kills 1 million people a year. Nobody is going to claim that this is not an important problem. You're solving a problem, it has impact on society. It's very important for you to be able to motivate the problem that you're trying to solve. I'm going to create a force field that will keep astronauts from dying in space. Very important problem. It sounds like, you've really motivated the problem. Let's see now. Block diagrams, flow diagrams, whatever you need to document the solution. You have to show the full, you have to teach how to build this device. You have to. And this is part of what's called the detailed description of the invention. Not only do you have to teach how to build the device, but you have to teach the preferred embodiment for the device. The preferred embodiment, this is the way you thought it should be constructed. But there are a few other ways you could construct it. So for example, you could say, well, I'm going to build a scanner based in a stepper motor, and this is how I did it. But you could do it with a servo too. Or you could do it with a wind-up clock. I don't know how you want to do it. You could do it with windshield wiper motors. Or you could do it with the, any one of another method for actuating, including nitinol wires, which are going to be able to move and they'll stretch and relax when you heat them. So there's all kinds of ways you can do movement, and maybe you could iterate through several. Examples are really important. The more examples you can think of, the better. That way it makes the patent broader. There's boilerplate language. It's kind of legalese, and you could throw it in there. But patents don't have to sound legal, although many of them do because they're written by lawyers. Let's see now. Embodiments. Embodiments are ways in which you can build the device. I could build it with this, I could build it with that, but the preferred embodiment is this, although the other ways work too. Let's see now. The key is that whatever it is you do to teach how to build the device, somebody who is skilled in the art should be able to use your description to reproduce the device. So when Edison patented the light bulb, he probably had to describe the different kinds of filaments he thought would be best for building the light bulb, but he could lay claim to other kinds of filaments too. How am I doing on time? I got till 2:30, right? 2:20? Yeah, I got time. Let's see now. The boilerplate, you can download it online. Oh, and you can get books on how to write a patent. I just finished reading a new one called Patent It Yourself. It's a new one and it's an old one. It's by David Pressman. It's new because it's a new edition. It's old because I think it's like edition 20 or something. Every time the patent law changes, he comes out with a new book. And I must tell you that the book I got from the library is twice as thick as the one that I bought when I first started this stuff back in the late 80s. So the Pressman book has gotten quite large, and it's still considered a standard in the field. If you've never written a patent yourself, it might make sense to hire a patent attorney. They'll guide you through it. Or you could take a whole course on it. And we teach a course here in the graduate school from the MOT program. And if you're in the ECE Master's program, you can take that course for credit as an elective. And the guy who teaches it, Mike Blake, is a patent attorney, and every patent attorney has an engineering degree, generally a bachelor's. So for example, Mike Blake has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So if you have an invention that's software, don't go to Mike Blake, because he's a mechanical engineer. If you have an invention that's electrical, go to a patent attorney who has an electrical engineering bachelor's. John Yankovich is a partner in a law firm who works at IACT for free as a board member, and he has an electrical engineering bachelor's degree. Make sure whoever you pick for your patent attorney can understand the idea without too much explanation. I've hired patent attorneys who took retainers that were not refundable, and then I found out they forgot all the math they ever knew. They had no business taking the money, and they never gave it back. Those patent attorneys don't get invited to IACT meetings. Don't sue patent attorneys. They're lawyers. They live for getting sued. They love that. So be very careful about who you pick for your patent attorney. That is the kind of business mistake that'll kill a business. There are certain invention help companies which are scams. Steer clear of those things. Your best bet is to come to IACT meetings, which are free, and network with other people, other inventors, other lawyers, and ask around about what to do if you're planning on commercializing your invention. So if the Ytricity shield, Raoul, is something that you're thinking can become the next big product, then, well, maybe, then you want to be able to make sure that you can file it with a provisional. A publication is a positive barrier to patentability. So if you publish this, you've got a year. After a year's time, if you don't file a provisional, you've lost the idea. Go to the next idea. So if you're publishing, if you're offering for sale, you're essentially getting a clock that starts to tick for a year. After that, you've got to file your provisional. Is it time for a break? Yeah, we had a break. I'm thinking it's time for another break. Oh, I'm sitting here with my legs crossed. I would like to take a short break. Is that okay? Okay, let's just do that because